Every week, the Payne family cuts straight to the real financial story.
The one question, Bob, everyone's asking is, are we in an artificial intelligence bubble? You've been through boom and bust. What do you think?
No hype, no myths. Just what actually matters to your money.
Does feel very similar to what we experienced in the 90s. Where are we, though? Are we in 1995, 1997, 1999?
Listen to the Pain Points of Wealth on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Hello, everybody. It's not Roger Stone. I love Roger Stone. Man, that guy, total genius, totally best-dressed dude in the world, makes Prince Charles look like a slob. This is Greg Kelly, his good friend, who has been acknowledged as a pretty well-dressed fellow himself. Although Roger is basically based in New York, and I'm based in, he's in Florida. I'm in New York, and we really don't, he doesn't see me when I'm not dressed up. I kind of roll in. I have more of a casual approach. It looks like I just got back from hiking pretty much any day of the week until I go on the television. Then I do spruce up a little bit, but Roger, thank you. Thank you for everything you've done for this station and really for the country. What he did for Donald Trump, absolute heroism. Absolute heroism. I feel the same way about, Rudy Giuliani. He did more for this country. He was great on 9/11, but this country really happened in service of President Trump during the first term, during the wilderness years, and to this day. I look forward to Rudy getting the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and maybe, who knows, Roger Stone as well. All right, this the shooting of the woman in Minneapolis, right? That tells the whole story. A woman shot by ICE. An American citizen gunned down by federal agents. She was a terrorist. She was a bad person. Well, I don't know if she was bad in every sense. I'm sure she had her good points, and I'm sorry she's dead. Never in a million years would I have parked in the middle of the street. Even if I just wanted to get out of my car, couldn't find a parking spot. Can you imagine ever in a million years doing that? Now throw in, block the street so that the federal officials can't do their job. If this were January 6th related, right? Well, the left would be celebrating. And it's really a wild moment. It feels a little bit like the O.J. Simpson matter, in that you might recall, if you're old enough, half the white people were dismayed, and black people were ebullient. They jumped up and down. They were so happy that O.J. was found not guilty. Now, I know there were lots of exceptions, right? We're painting with a broad brush here. Today, it's kind of similar. It's not along racial lines. It's along political lines, ideology. Republicans, basically, conservatives, MAGA. I'd like to think regular people, sensible people, can look at this video and say, yeah, I can see why the officer had to shoot that lady. And liberals, leftists, weirdos, they don't get it. And I do mean weirdos. You don't want to say that about half the country. Well, look at what they've embraced. Look at what they're into these days. Joe Biden, every State of the Union talked about trans kids. Trans kids for these people is some sort of civil right. Wow, it's so perverted and weird. So they are a perverted and weird and totally out of it. Look, the debate in a weird way already exonerates the officer. If you have the entire country looking at the same video and seeing, one side says this, the other side says that, then the default is, what was the officer thinking? What was the ICE officer thinking? Did he feel endangered? Did he feel that way? Because if you look up the George Floyd Criminal Justice Reform Act that they passed in the wake of George Floyd's demise, oh gosh, I was so sad. Oh, the drug addict criminal. Oh, by the way, he wasn't murdered. All right. One of the biggest fantasies ever created, and also psychological operation, a crime on this country. We can talk about that some other time. Chauvin's innocent, and he should be let go or I don't think he's eligible for a pardon because it's in a state prison. Anyway, it goes to the officer's feelings. If a reasonable person could perceive that they were in serious danger of serious injury or death, they have the right to use deadly force. Look, I want to go to JD Vance. We haven't seen JD Vance a lot lately. Where has he been? The inside word was he was a little bit not so cool with Venezuela stuff. And people saw, maybe Marco Rubio is I don't know what's going on. That's palace intrigue. Every administration has their palace intrigue, but I saw JD Vance today. He was great. And went into the briefing room and let it rip. Go ahead.
Well, being part of the network doesn't justify being shot, but ramming an ICE officer with your car, that's what justifies being shot. It's not a good thing, by the way, but when you force somebody to engage in self-defense, it's almost a preposterous question.
Wow. That's pretty effective. That's really good. We have another one? I'd like to hear a little bit more JD Vance.
When I was actually walking out here, somebody sent me a photo of a CNN headline about what happened in Minneapolis. And this is the headline. I'm just going to read it. Outrage after ICE officer kills U.S. citizen in Minneapolis. Well, that's one way to put it, and that is the way that many people in the corporate media have put this attack over the last 24 hours. And I say attack very, very intentionally because this was an attack on federal law enforcement. This was an attack on law and order. This was an attack on the American people. The way that the media, by and large, has reported this story has been an absolute disgrace, and it puts our law enforcement officers at risk every single day. What that headline leaves out is the fact that very ICE officer nearly had his life ended, dragged by a car 6 months ago, 33 stitches in his leg. So you think maybe he's a little bit sensitive about somebody ramming him with an automobile? What that headline leaves out is that woman was there to interfere with a legitimate law enforcement operation in the United States of.
Now we see why President Trump picked this guy. I saw it right away. I didn't need convincing. But he's brilliant. He's articulate. He's a good man. And he totally gets it. That was wild to see. And all those reporters, they should feel ashamed. They have gone off the deep end. They've been defending tyranny. They've been trying to silence people. They don't seem to like freedom very much. It's a strange dark. I said something yesterday. I don't want to bring up what it was, but I was talking about something on air, and I still talk about it. I just don't want to mention what it was. But I got a phone call from somebody, and they said, you may not want to talk about that. And they told me the reasons why it would not be prudent to continue to talk about this one issue. And they're talking. I said, stop. For the past, how long has it been? 6? Going 10 years, maybe 7, 8. How long has it been? When did the country really go crazy? And people would say, you really should lighten up on this January 6th stuff. It doesn't do you any good. Really? You think so? No, you shouldn't bring that up. Shut up. What made me mad, it didn't make me silent or reluctant. It made me even more, it just made me angry and like a little bit defiant. I mean, a little bit like, give me a break. This is a free country, supposedly, and we can say stuff. I tweeted something. What was it also? The election, you got to watch out. Don't go too much for Trump. It's DeSantis. I had so many people, and these people mean well. It's in your best interest to say this. It's in your best interest to not say that. You may want to tone it down. I thought this was America. And they weren't worried about the audience. You know what they were worried about? Like powerful people, saying, oh, that's not a good thing to say, or not going with the conventional wisdom of the dominant media. This is a free country and I'm going to enjoy it. Somebody once told me, you got to make your own fun. And we here at WABC, we really do that. We really do that. Conservative media is robust and strong, but comparatively speaking, it's still kind of small. Thank God for independent voices like us and all the podcasters out there. And Fox News is so-so. Let's face it, right? They're only Trump. They're only with Trump when it's safe. They're only with Trump when it's like cool to be with Trump. When it's easy to be with Trump. What was it like to be with Trump on, say, January 7th of 2021? Huh? What was that like? That was pretty wild. That was a wild time. I did not shut up. I know about January 6th. I know it through and through. By the way, imagine January 6th and what happened yesterday in Minneapolis. January 6th, 130-pound, 5'5" woman is going through a doorway. She's not armed. She has nothing. She's not in a vehicle. There's 130 pounds of her. Michael Byrd, the lieutenant, I think she's a threat. You assess that? Yeah, she was definitely a threat. So I aimed to pull the trigger. He had a real Forrest Gump. Not Forrest. Who was Forrest Gump's friend? Bubba Gump. A real stupid kind of way about him. Bubba Gump. He was more like that. You compare Ashley Babbitt to a 2-ton vehicle. This woman was driving a 2-ton vehicle at a police officer in his direction. That's a threat. If you look at the video really up close, Tim Pool and some of our other friends have looked at this closer than I did at first. The wheel, you can see, is skidding on the ice, and the wheel is pointed straight ahead. She doesn't try to make the turn until, after the officer takes his gun out. How about that? It's just an amazing time. They call it an inflection point. Although I seem to remember having like 75 of those over the past 3 years. So I don't know what that means, but I know this. I hope the officer is sleeping well. I hope he's healthy. I hope the family of the lost person, I've already heard from them. Daily Mail and others are saying things like she shouldn't have been there. It was none of her business. Remember Tim Walz? Mind your own damn business. Yeah, that's a good idea. I thought that was the Minnesota motto. Mind your own damn business. He said that if your neighbor's kid wants to get gender reassignment, you should stay out of it. And if the parents don't think that's a good idea, well, Minnesota should get involved and make sure that happens. And don't tell the parents. All kinds of crazy. No, actually, that is my business. That's the people's business. But getting involved in ICE demonstrations we got to find out if this woman was paid. In all likelihood, she was. Who has time on a weekday morning to screw around downtown yelling at cops? I mean, she's not even Somali, for crying out loud, right? She was born here. We're going to take a break, right? And Roger Stone, we so appreciate you. What's it like to have the SWAT team show up at your house? Huh? What has that ever happened to you? It could if the Democrats ever get in again. We'll be right back.
Every week, the Payne family cuts straight to the real financial story.
The one question, Bob, everyone's asking is, are we in an artificial intelligence bubble? You've been through boom and bust. What do you think?
No hype, no myths. Just what actually matters to your money.
Does feel very similar to what we experienced in the 90s. Where are we, though? Are we in 1995, 1997, 1999?
Listen to the Pain Points of Wealth on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
I desperately want a reporter to go out and ask each of those people, what does ICE stand for? Immigrations, Customs Enforcement? Do you think they all know that? I know some of these people don't know that. I myself, in 2018, I thought, what is this ICE thing everyone's talking about all of a sudden? My dad was the Customs Commissioner, the U.S. Customs Service, and they merged it. And it changed. I don't like the cursing that I'm hearing from these lower level people. There's something very coarse about it, and I can be profane, but there's something really wrong with that. This is the result of the sanctuary situation. You want a sanctuary city? This is what this happens in a sanctuary city. They ordered the cops not to facilitate ICE, and that's why those people were allowed to drive into the middle of the road and hamper their operations. Yes, Mike, how are you?
Yeah. Hi, Greg. Listen, I was a patrolman in the city of New York in the 70s, and the patrol guy wouldn't allow you to shoot at a car unless you were being fired upon. I'm sure your father would even agree with that.
Wait a second. You were a patrol guy. What?
I was a police officer in the 4th precinct, to be exact.
In the Bronx.
1973, that's correct. The Bronx, Ryer Avenue, 181. And the patrol guy specifically stated, now again, I'm out a long time, but the patrol guide specifically stated that you couldn't shoot upon a vehicle, even if it was being used as a weapon upon you, unless you were being fired upon. And the other point is, and again, I'm not trying to exonerate...
Just before you go any further, life has come a long way since then. Cars are routinely used as weapons. We didn't see that back when you were on the job. We saw that in New Orleans last year. Remember? New Year's in New Orleans? That was a guy in a car. There were no shots coming from that car, so they shouldn't have shot him, right? He was just driving the car. He wasn't shooting. What about the guy who was driving the rental van down the West Side Highway? Do you remember that? He ran over all those bike riders from Argentina. Remember that terrorism attack? Now, that involved a Ryder truck. No gun. Is he not supposed to shoot then? Okay. These things. There was a Christmas fair over in Germany. This is not this past Christmas, the Christmas before. The patrol manual has been updated. And if you're a police officer and your life is about to end, fire away. Absolutely. And, there's a certain amount of discretion. The rule book. I can't quote the patrol guide now. I wonder if you can quote it verbatim exactly the way it was back then. But if that was the law or the regulation, not a law, but a regulation, obviously it needed to be updated because you can be in a circumstance where a car is threatening your life or somebody else's and no bullets are emerging from it. Fair enough?
No, it's not, because you know why?
It's
not.
What
if there were children playing down the block where that car careened out of control? Then that car was recklessly gone out of control.
No, I am really surprised at you. What if there were children, all right? He's supposed to evaluate children. He's supposed to evaluate... He is right there. He's the guy who's about to die. He's the guy. Wait a second. So all of those scenarios I gave you, where cars are being used as a weapon, the cop is supposed to say, well, if I shoot and he dies, that car could continue to do something. I am a little bit surprised, my fellow New Yorker, veteran of the 4-6, but that's the way it is. Thank you.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
One of the most powerful people in the world. I'm looking at him right now, JD Vance. Looks great in that suit he's wearing. Guy's lost weight. I saw him last Memorial Day. He has definitely lost weight, taking good care of himself. He's speaking at the White House right now. Pump up the volume, please.
Our Attorney General, first of all, for getting a lot of resources to Minneapolis to start to investigate and prosecute this fraud, really at an industrial scale. We've never seen fraud like this in the history of our country. Pam has been doing a great job to get the resources there to uncover it. But importantly, creating a job like this often takes months, sometimes even longer. When we realized that we needed this Associate Attorney General position, Pam got this person up and running in about a week. We're going to make the nomination hopefully in the next few days. We'll obviously let you guys know who that is when we do it. I've talked to Senate Majority Leader John Thune, who has promised me swift confirmation for this official. But this is the person who is going to make sure that we stop defrauding the American people. Here's one final thing I'll say about this. I've heard a lot of people say that we need a special counsel to investigate fraud in the United States of America. I actually agree, and that's what this position does. It has all the benefits, all the resources, all the authority of a special counsel, but with two crucial differences. Number one, it will be run out of the White House under the supervision of me and the President of the United States. And number two, it's actually constitutionally legitimate. As you guys may know, the special counsel statute has some major constitutional questions. When we get the bad guys, we want to make sure we get them permanently and they don't have some legal technicality they can get out of, which is why we set it up as an associate attorney general. I'll take some questions, but I want to make just one final observation here. When I was actually walking out here, somebody sent me a photo of a CNN headline about what happened in Minneapolis. And this is the headline. I'm just going to read it. Outrage after ICE officer kills U.S. citizen in Minneapolis. Well, that's one way to put it, and that is the way that many people in the corporate media have put this attack over the last 24 hours. And I say attack very, very intentionally, because this was an attack on federal law enforcement. This was an attack on law and order. This was an attack on the American people. The way that the media, by and large, has reported this story has been an absolute disgrace, and it puts our law enforcement officers at risk every single day. What that headline leaves out is the fact that that very ICE officer nearly had his life ended, dragged by a car 6 months ago, 33 stitches in his leg. So you think maybe he's a little bit sensitive about somebody ramming him with an automobile? What that headline leaves out is that that woman was there to interfere with a legitimate law enforcement operation in the United States of America. What that headline leaves out is that that woman is part of a broader left-wing network to attack, to dox, to assault, and to make it impossible for our ICE officers to do their job. If the media wants to tell the truth, they ought to tell the truth that a group of left-wing radicals have been working tirelessly, sometimes using domestic terror techniques to try to make it impossible for the President of the United States to do what the American people elected him to do, which is enforce our immigration laws. The President stands with ICE. I stand with ICE. We stand with all of our law enforcement officers. And part of that is recognizing that you people in the media, not everybody in this room, but many people in this room have been lying about this attack. She was trying to ram this guy with her car. He shot back. He defended himself. He's already been seriously wounded in law enforcement operations before. And everybody who's been repeating the lie that this is some innocent woman who was out for a drive in Minneapolis when a law enforcement officer shot at her, you should be ashamed of yourselves. Every single one of you. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I wanted to read a quote from Tim Walz earlier today. He said, "When things looked bleak, it was Minnesota's first that held the line for the nation on July 3rd, 1863, and I think we may be in that moment now." Can you comment on his rhetoric and Mayor Jacob Frey and whether they want to see unrest in Minneapolis?
Well, that's very tough rhetoric from a guy who just quit because his fraudulent activities have been uncovered. Look, Tim Walz is a joke. His entire administration has been a joke. The idea that he's some sort of freedom fighter, he's not. He's a guy who has enabled fraud and maybe, in fact, has participated in fraud. That's what this new Assistant Attorney General position is going to find out. I don't care what Tim Walz says. I care about getting to the bottom of this fraud for the American people, and I care about enforcing the nation's immigration laws. That's what we're going to stay focused on.
Vice President, a related question here. I mean, Democrats have accused ICE of murder. They've said they're targeting Americans. They've told ICE to get the F out of Minnesota. This is going to stoke the fire against ICE agents, and you're talking about ICE agents right now and being concerned about them. What, if anything, is the administration going to do to make sure these folks are protected during these protests? But also, should DHS sort of revisit their procedures here? I mean, nobody wants to see an American killed. Are there changes that need to be made to make sure something like this doesn't happen again?
Look, first of all, of course, nobody wants an American citizen to be killed. This is absolutely a tragedy, but it's a tragedy of the making of the far left. They have radicalized a very small segment of the population, taught them that ICE agents are engaging in wide-scale violation of people's rights. What our ICE officers are doing is deporting the millions of criminal aliens that were let in during the Biden administration. So number one, we have to say, as a matter of leadership, and I would appreciate if the Democrats would join me on this, let's be honest about the fact that we have way too many illegal aliens in this country. Our ICE officers should be supported in doing their job. You're trying to actually marshal the far left lunatic fringe to engage in doxing, to try to make it impossible for them to enforce the law, and in some cases actually to engage in acts of domestic terrorism against our law enforcement officers. When you talk about different plans, different protocols, different policies, I forget exactly how you asked the question. Here's the simple fact. What we're going to do is make it easier for the American people's administration to enforce the American people's law. And that means that Democrats have to stop rallying the mob against legitimate law enforcement operations. And that means that we are going to get tough tougher, and that's what this AAG position is about. We're going to get tougher at the people who are defrauding the United States by inciting violence against our law enforcement officers. That's one of the things that we're going to do. We've already started that work at the Department of Justice, but we're going to keep on doing it, and this new AAG position is going to kick that into high gear.
Vice President Vance, you just suggested that this woman who was killed, Renee Good, is part of a broader left-wing network. Who do you think is behind this broader left-wing network?
Well, it's one of the things we're going to have to figure out, but here's the way that I put it. When somebody throws a brick at an ICE agent, or somebody tries to run over an ICE agent, who paid for the brick? And who told protesters to show up and engage in violent activity against our law enforcement officers? You see, just with this most recent terrible incident in Minneapolis, you see friends of this woman's or other people who are eyewitnesses saying basically that she was there to engage in obstruction of a legitimate law enforcement operation. How did she get there? How did she learn about this? There's an entire network, and frankly, some of the media are participating in it, that is trying to incite violence against our law enforcement officers. It's ridiculous, it's preposterous, and part of our investigatory work is getting to the bottom of it. Who's funding it, who's supporting it, who's cheerleading it, and of course, if there's illegal activity related to that, we're going to get to the bottom of that and prosecute it where we can.
Mr. Vice President, thank you for taking questions today. Is there a risk with you describing her as a deranged leftist, talking about very specific facts of these events, when an investigation is just beginning? Are you preempting a thorough investigation by drawing such conclusions? And have you received any information beyond the videos we've seen publicly about this individual, her specific acts, that has informed your point of view?
Well, first of all, the Department of Justice is going to investigate this. The Department of Homeland Security is already investigating this. But the simple fact is, what you see is what you get in this case. You have a woman who is trying to obstruct a legitimate law enforcement operation. Nobody debates that. You have a woman who aimed her car at a law enforcement officer and pressed on the accelerator. Nobody debates that. I can believe that her death is a tragedy, while also recognizing that it's a tragedy of her own making and a tragedy of the far left who has marshaled an entire movement, a lunatic fringe, against our law enforcement officers. I think what is clearly happening here, and it's going to keep on happening unless the Democrats wake up and say, you know what, you don't have to agree with our immigration policies. You don't have to agree with what the president or the vice president believe about immigration enforcement, but why don't you take this to the ballot box? Why don't you vote? Why don't you organize? Instead, what some of them are doing is encouraging people to get violent with our law enforcement officials. It's disgraceful, and it's got to stop.
Just to follow up on that question, and again, thank you for taking questions, Mr. Vice President. There's clearly a lot of emotion in Minnesota, across the country, over this incident. You're calling Renee Good a deranged leftist. There's been heated rhetoric that we've also heard from officials. What responsibility do you and the president have to diffuse some of the tension that we are seeing play out in Minnesota, bring down the temperature as this investigation is unfolding?
What we have a responsibility to do is to protect the people who are enforcing the law and protect the country writ large. Whether you're a Democrat or Republican, you deserve to have the people's laws enforced in the United States of America. Now, again, I'm not happy that this woman lost her life. I'm not happy that this woman was there at a protest violating the law by interfering with a law enforcement action. I think that we can all recognize that the best way to turn down the temperature is to tell people to take their concerns about immigration policy to the ballot box. Stop assaulting and stop inciting violence against our law enforcement officers. That's the best way to take down the temperature. And we're not going to give in to terrorism on this. And that's exactly what's happening. People trying to antagonize, to commit acts of violence. They throw bricks at them. Sometimes they shoot at them. Sometimes they dox them. Sometimes they go to their place of residence and harass their families. This is classic terrorism. And we cannot say that when a far left fringe is inciting violence against our brave law enforcement officials, that we're no longer going to enforce the law. That's rewarding the very people who are engaged in this garbage. The actual reward that they just got is a new assistant attorney general who is going to prosecute and investigate this stuff even more aggressively than before.
Thanks for taking my question. So the head of Minnesota's investigations agency says that the U.S. Attorney's Office has essentially cut off the state investigations agency's access to through the investigation? What is the precedent for that, and why shouldn't the Minnesota officials on the ground have access and evidence to work on this investigation?
First of all, I wish the state officials in Minnesota would investigate why you have so many people who are using their vehicles and other means to actually interfere with a legitimate law enforcement operation. The precedent here is very simple. You have a federal law enforcement official engaging in federal law enforcement action. That's a federal issue. That guy is protected by absolute immunity. He was doing his job. The idea that Tim Walz and a bunch of radicals in Minneapolis are going to go after and make this guy's life miserable because he was doing the job that he was asked to do is preposterous. The unprecedented thing is the idea that a local official can actually prosecute a federal official with absolute immunity. I've never seen anything like that. It would get tossed out by a judge. So what I'd like Minnesota to focus on is the real issue that they're encouraging people. Minneapolis officials are encouraging people to commit violence against ICE officials. It's ridiculous. It's got to stop.
Sir.
Go ahead.
Vice President, thank you. You said earlier that there's a left-wing network to attack, to dox, to assault, and make it impossible for ICE officers to do their job. You told my colleague just now that there's an investigation going on into that network.
Yep.
So if everything that you say is true, how does being part of that network justify being shot?
Well, being part of the network doesn't justify being shot, but ramming an ICE officer with your car, that's what justifies being shot. It's not a good thing, by the way, but when you force somebody to engage in self-defense, it's almost a preposterous question. I'm not saying that funding some of this stuff justifies capital punishment. Nobody would suggest that. The reason this woman is dead is because she tried to ram somebody with her car, and that guy acted in self-defense. That is why she lost her life, and that is the tragedy. Now, there may be other violations of the law and other penalties that are associated with those violations of the law. For example, if you are funding violence against our law enforcement officers, I'm not a prosecutor. My guess is that's not the sort of thing that earns capital punishment, but it should sure as hell earn you a few years in prison if you're funding the effort to try to assault our law enforcement officers. What is, I'm sorry, guys, what's going on here? You guys are meant to report the truth. How have you let yourself become agents of propaganda of a radical fringe that's making it harder for us to enforce our laws? You just asked me a question that presumed that the reason why this woman died is because she was engaged in legitimate protest. She tried to run somebody over with her car, and the guy defended himself when that happened. Next question.
But the investigation is still ongoing.
I said next question.
Mr. Vice President, I mean, you presumably watched the video yourself. There's not the slightest doubt in your mind, having viewed it, that the victim, you still believe that she deliberately tried to ram him despite seeing this video?
Look, I don't know what is in a person's heart or in a person's head, and obviously we're not going to get the chance to ask this woman what was going on. What I am certain of is that she violated the law. What I am certain of is that officer had every reason to think that he was under very serious threat for injury or in fact, his life. What I'm certain of is that she accelerated in a way where she ran into the guy. I don't know what was in her heart and what was in her head, but I know that she violated the law, and I know that officer was acting in self-defense. It raises an interesting point, though. Look, if people want to say that we should have a legitimate debate about, what was she really doing, right? Was she panicking when she drove into this officer, or was she actually trying to ram him? That's a reasonable conversation. What's not reasonable is for so many of you to plaster all over the media that this was an innocent woman and that the ICE agent committed murder, which is what many of you have said explicitly and some of you have said implicitly. That's what I have an objection to. The idea that this was not justified is absurd, and I think everybody knows it in their heart. Yeah. In the green jacket.
Taking down the temperature, it seems like political violence is ratcheting up and riots could be around the corner. What steps does the administration have planned to try to unite America? Average people on both political sides are so tired of fighting with each other, and I think all the journalists in this room could agree with me that we don't want to be part of the problem. Do you have any words to unite America?
I know you don't want to be a part of the problem, and I think that's true of a lot of you. I'm not sure it's true for everybody, because the reporting over this has been one of the biggest scandals I've ever seen in media. I've never seen a case so misrepresented and misreported when you have a guy who is defending himself and is now being treated as some sort of federal assassin by so many of the people in this room. First of all, let me say about crime. You mentioned violence. One of the things we're proudest about is that you saw violent crime over the last last year dropped by 20%. Why is that dropped by 20%? Is it because we're attacking our law enforcement officers, or is it because we in the administration are empowering our law enforcement officers to enforce the law? I think that's one of the ways you take down the temperature, is you make people feel more secure and safe in their person and property. That's why we care so much about protecting our law enforcement, because it accrues to the benefit of the entire national community. I think that we can absolutely talk about the ways in which, we can lower the temperature by discussing differences in a reasonable and rational way.
I love it. JD Vance on fire. We'll be right back. Give me a call.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Must be wherever the hell he is. He's not happy with this little punk. I can't believe it. The Jeopardy guy. Hello, Jerry. Hello. Are you there?
Yeah, hi, Greg. I'll just give you in a nutshell what I think. So, prosecutorial discretion is the proper route here, meaning that there should be no prosecution. An honest prosecutor in that county, the state now I'm talking about, federal I'm not worried about at all, obviously, would not prosecute this man because the state has no interest. Just everything that JD Vance has said about the context of what this woman created, and this is a law enforcement agent who's working for the state. And, if you work for the federal government, I'm talking about the state large. So prosecutorial discretion, you would not do this. However, the proper route is they have redressed the family of this woman. It would be civil. And the reason would be, we all know negligence. There is a possibility, and this is the route they want to turn into criminal, that they could call it a gross negligence because there are two things that make things go above negligence. And it's this: when you have two dangerous instruments, you have one person has a gun, let me finish my point, and the other thing is a car, then you have a manual, and they go to the police manual.
All right. No. Throw that damn manual away. All right. What trumps everything in that manual, in fact, this is in the George Floyd Criminal Justice Act, sponsored by Democrats, that the use of deadly force is authorized when a law enforcement officer suspects that his life, someone else's life, is at risk of death or serious bodily injury. That trumps basically everything else. So, yeah. And good luck suing the U.S. government. It's a very difficult thing to do, unless you got somebody advocating for you. Jerry, I got to leave it there, but thank you. Marie?
Yes, Greg. I agree with you 100%, and JD Vance 100%. As the mother and the wife of retired NYPD, ICE is trying to help people. They're trying to save people's lives. Why did they say that ICE agents are criminals? How could they say that when they're putting their life on the line to protect?
And by saying those things, they're endangering their lives. They're making a hard job even tougher, even harder. And it's really a shame. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear The Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder,
what the heck is going on here? Every week, the Payne family cuts straight to the real financial story.
The one question, Bob, everyone's asking is, are we in an artificial intelligence bubble? You've been through boom and bust. What do you think?
No hype, no myths. Just what actually matters to your money.
Does feel very similar to what we experienced in the 90s. Where are we, though? Are we in 1995, 1997, 1999?
Listen to the Pain Points of Wealth on the Red Apple Podcast Network.